Spanish-American War. Remember the Maine, but not while the battle is raging like tempests of darkness and death, not where the heart beats with hatred and passion, but speak her name softly with tear-laden breath. Go forth to a duty, go nobly and bravely, for freedom unfettered by suffering and pain. Take peace and protection to poor starving Cuba, bind up her wounds, and remember the Maine. World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam conflict, were fought by both volunteers and draftees. Our next monument, the Spanish-American War Monument, was, quote, the splendid little war fought entirely by volunteers. It was the most popular war in American history, also our shortest. Well, not all patriotic Americans endorsed the march to arms and conquest, despite William Randolph Hearst's drumbeating, start a war to sell newspapers. All you need to read is Mark Twain's chilling war prayer. O Lord our God, help us to tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. So these volunteers shouted rather unprayerfully as they sailed to Cuba, Puerto Rico, China to take part in the Boxer Rebellion, or the Philippines as part of the Commodore Dewey's Asiatic Fleet. Again, we smile ironically at another curious twist of history. The sons and grandsons of those Filipinos who fought against us in defense of their homeland would become our guerrilla allies against the common enemy of the invading Japanese in World War II. This statue is famously titled The Hiker. In World War II, it was G.I. Joe, or maybe William Joe. In World War I, it was Doughboy. The Spanish-American soldiers nicknamed themselves hikers. This hiker has been facing westward, watching downtown Danville, since he was dedicated on Independence Day, 1925, at a cost of $3,000. The statue was made by the American Art Bronze Foundry, Chicago, Thomas Evans of Danville, the contractor. The young son of the Commodore of the Rufus King Polk Camp, Charles Small, unveiled the monument. This wasn't, however, where the Spanish veterans originally planned for this monument to be based. They wanted it located at the triangle at the intersection of Bloom and Walnut, but the neighbors objected. They hiked him over here instead, where he best belongs, united with his brothers in arms. Our hiker is dressed for the tropics. He wears the slouch campaign hat, large cartridge belt, canteen, the sleeves of his dark blue blouse rolled up. He's relaxed, casually holding his Craig Jorgensen 30-40. See the magazine on the side of the chamber of the carbine, bolt action. The Craig was Norwegian-made, chosen because it was smokeless. The old Springfields billowed from the barrel when fired, inviting Spanish artillery to shell the smoke. The base of the monument forms a cross, symbolizing the badge of the United Spanish War veterans, whose motto was freedom, patriotism, humanity, with each arm of the badge inscribed with the name of the land where they fought: Cuba, Puerto Rico, Philippines, USA. On the reverse of the badge, you would find etched on the arms of the cross the 4 cardinal points with the word United imprinted in the middle, the hiker. You will find kindred statues at over 50 other locations of our country. There were 2 sculptors renowned for their version of the hiker, Alan Newman and Alice Kitson. Both relied on the rugged realism of Frederick Remington's paintings as their inspiration. A new natural look instead of the stately Roman or Greek style. Newman's versions were jauntier, Kitson more homespun. Ours likely is the Kitson version, similar to what you will find at Arlington Cemetery, Schenectady Central Park, or the lawn of the Texas State Capitol. Newman's hikers you will find in Pittsburgh, Staten Island, or Bayonne, where they too have a similar bronze plaque from metal recovered from the USS Maine. For the hiker is not the only monument to these veterans. We see another installed by the American Legion Post number 40. It remains the only monument in this park with a naval significance. Look to the hiker's right, and you will find a memorial bearing relics of 2 warships. The first is the bronze plaque made from metal recovered from the USS Maine. In memoriam, proclaims the plaque. A mournful Lady Liberty bears a shield proclaiming the words patriotism, devotion. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. The press provided the excuse for war editors fanning the flames of jingoism by printing as fact how the USS Maine, a second-class pre-dreadnought battleship, exploded on February 15, 1898 in Havana Harbor, having struck a dastardly Spanish mine. In memoriam refers to the 266 sailors killed. 8 more dying days later from the injuries. 229 of these sailors lay buried in Arlington. Yellow journalism, stirring the passions of an eagerly duped citizenry, is nothing new. Remember the Maine? Repeated the headlines. And the fever war turned frenzied, and young men marched for adventure. It is likelier the explosion on the Maine was caused by a fire in its coal bunker near the reserve magazine. The marker originally was installed in Riverside Park in 1914, appropriately overlooking the Susquehanna River. But due to the construction of the retaining wall, it had to be moved. So in 1936, it was brought to the Memorial Park and placed at the farthest eastern end. Then again, during more recent efforts to tidy and trim Memorial Park, it was relocated to where it best belongs, nearby the feet of the hiker. Below the bronze relief, you may touch a hunk of ordinary metal. This is a relic of a second naval vessel. It has often gone unnoticed and unappreciated. The iron plate rivets fast, yet another Danville connection to the great emancipator, bringing us closer to Lincoln. For this plate, a piece of turret armor plate, was taken from the Civil War monitor ironclad USS Montauk. The ironclad Montauk, while stationed off Washington, D.C. in late April 1865, served as the platform for the examination of the corpse of John Wilkes Booth, the murderer of Abraham Lincoln, as well as the temporary prison for several of Booth's co-conspirators.